Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants, greetings and a warm welcome to our distinguished webinar titled Small Towns, Big Impacts Strategies for Small Town Waste Management. I am Stanzin Otsal, an urban planner and expert in our integrated urban water management for LEDeG. And I am honored to serve as your moderator for today's session. So, in the urban landscape of India, where over 1.5 lakh tons of solid waste is generated daily, the imperative to foster sustainable waste management practices has never been more pressing. Despite, despite the ambitious target set forth by the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban, smaller towns continue to grapple with significant challenges in waste management and underscoring the need of a collaborative and innovative solutions. Today, in commemoration of the World Environment Day, LEDeC, in collaboration with BORDA, proudly presents this webinar aimed at fostering a meaningful dialogue surrounding the unique waste management challenges faced by small towns and showcasing actionable solutions that can pave the way towards a greener future. So, LEDeC, with its rich legacy of promoting sustainable development and ecological equilibrium in Ladakh, joins hands with BORDA, a global leader in driving sustainable urban and rural development through innovative solutions to spearhead this crucial discussion. So LEDeC, as of now, so I'll be just sharing a small slide for just to showcase where BORDA is working all over the world. As you can see, BORDA has been working all over the world, and especially under this project, we have been working the Southeast Asia. In India, we have two partners and overall four partner towns, Leh and Kargil, uh, Chikbalapura and Chintamani. BORDA is also working in Bangladesh, Nepal. Just a second, I think we are having some problem with the screen sharing. So, I think we'll just go ahead and we'll just go ahead our first session, and that is Miss Kiran Mai, and she'll be presenting us with the over. So she is an esteemed environmental engineer specializing in solid waste management at BORDA Southeast Asia. And Kiran Mai will provide us with an insightful overview of small towns waste management practices. Ms. Kiran Mai, you can present your screen.
Thanks, Utsal, for the quick introduction. Good evening, everyone. I think, Utsal, can you just stop sharing the screen? I'm not able to share my screen.
Okay, yes. Yes.
Thanks, Utsal. Let me know when my presentation is visible. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Utsal, for the quick introduction. Moving forward with the session, we'll start by looking into the India's national statistics of waste management scenario. So according to CPCB data, India generates 1.6 lakh of metric ton of waste every day, out of which only 50% gets treated and the rest 50% waste still remains uncollected, unattended or landfilled. So this data point clearly shows that 50% of India's generated waste is unscientifically managed every day. So let's have a quick look on what's the status with small towns. So according to SBM data, 60% of India's municipal solid waste is generated from small and medium towns. When I say small and medium towns, I refer to the cities which have a population lesser than a million. And also the SBM data says that there is 30% gap in the treatment of this waste that's generated in small and medium towns. Also, when I say a gap is something it's leading to something a bigger issue called legacy waste or the dump site issues. So the same SBM dashboard says that around nearly 50% of India's legacy waste lies in these small and medium towns. Now we are talking about dump site and landfills. It's also essential that we speak about GHG emissions and methane emissions as well. So according to NERI's estimates, India's landfills generate around on an average of 0.34 gigatons of methane every year per landfill. So, looking at all these big numbers and data points, it's quite clear that small towns have a major share and role in India's overall big numbers that I just shared in the last screen. So, but unfortunately, even though there is a major share that's coming from small towns, it's it's unfortunate that small towns doesn't get enough of attention for solving its challenges in terms of waste management. But we try to end up talking about metro cities waste problems and dump sites like Dionar or Gazipur of Delhi's issues like fire issues and landslide issues. But on the other hand, cumulatively, the dump site lying in these small towns will add up to the same magnitude of the larger cities or the metro cities. Also, let's try to see why are we focusing on small towns and why is the overall webinar is knit around small towns. According to census data, India has doubled its number of small towns in the last 2 decades. And also, it also says that one third of urban population lies with these small towns. Now, it's quite clear that uh, Indian small towns are no more small. There are emerging cities. And these emerging cities really need our focus in addressing their urban challenges. Not just urbanization is just one single issue. There are multiple issues like inadequate policy focus, poor basic services, and also there is a lower allocation of budget in there are several national schemes. Even though small towns has to cater around 58 percentage of nation's population. So all these problems are there, but still small towns doesn't get enough of attention. So with this, I would just again reiterate these emerging cities really need attention on solving their urban problems. Before I conclude the presentation, I just want to quickly run through some of the identified key challenges as we work in the Southern Asian municipalities. Uh, when we observe the waste practices in these municipalities, we tend to see these smaller municipalities tend to focus more on the collection part of it, transportation part of it, but they tend to put lesser efforts uh, on the disposal or the treatment or the processing part of it. So there is it clearly shows that there's a lack of focus across overall value chain. Also, let's looking into metro cities like Bangalore, we see a lot of private players engagement in these towns, in these larger metro cities, but that is completely missing in terms of small towns. We see there is a lot of private players engaged in several sectors, like be it collection, be it processing in larger cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Ahmedabad. But this is completely, absolutely missing in terms of smaller municipalities. Also, I would like to say there is a huge gap of enabling market for waste fraction utilization. When I say this, waste streams like be it like for example RDF from dump site remediation still is a challenge. Many municipalities still are figuring out their end utilizer. So also there is There is no clear mandate or MOU that a state government has signed with the end user, like cement factories or the thermal power plants. And also, since these smaller municipalities are very remote, distant from the end users like cement factories, it's challenge for them to manage the RDF. And also, another example is that non-recyclables like thermocol. We end up seeing thermocol packed into a godown of small towns. So there's always a problem of forward linkage of these kind of non-recyclables. Also, as I was mentioning in the earlier slides, the data, there's a lot of gap and discrepancy in the data. So we see SBM data showcasing certain number of operational dump site, but that is completely different with the CPCB's data. So there is a lot of gap and discrepancy in the data. So with this, there are many other several challenges, but with this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you for listening to us. I hope my co-panelists discuss about innovative solutions for emerging cities, urban waste management. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kiran Maiji, for the enlightening presentation. Next, we are privileged to hear from Mr. Arun Murugesh, the Vice President of Sales at Sahas Zero Waste. Mr. Arun brings with him wealth of experience in waste management, and he will delve into the potential for private investment in small town waste management initiatives. Arunji, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Good afternoon to all the viewers and participants. It's definitely an honor to look at a very dedicated topic on small cities and share our experiences that we've had. Just before we get into the topic itself, I would like to introduce about our organization. So my name is Arun, and I'm from a company, a social enterprise called Sahas Zero Waste. We're a 10-year-old organization about to complete 11 years. And we believe in this tagline about bringing together nature, people, and technology. We are an IMS certified organization, which means we've received our ISO certifications for quality, environment, and occupational health and safety as well. Our head office is in Bangalore, and we are present pan-India as well. Let's dig straight into what are the key problem statements that we look at in waste management. Of course, to start off with, waste is an issue when it comes to environmental degradation. It becomes an existential issue, and we have seen and heard from Kiran Mai as well in terms of the linkages to waste in itself. When you consider the dry waste or the wet waste, are very poor. The supply chains are very poor across different geographies. So, in terms of environmental compliances is a big issue. Here you can see one of the TMC workers themselves setting the waste on fire because it's an uncontrollable problem at the moment. Second is in terms of social security. The photo you see here is a aggregator in a larger city in Ghaziabad. And we all know that, the informal sector, while they are definitely a key part of the entire supply chain, there needs a lot of work around their social security benefits. So this is definitely another problem statement that we've seen and witnessed. And also, most importantly, my waste is my problem. My waste is my responsibility. And this has to be resonating with everyone out there. There is not much traceability. So we are talking about lack of data. Imagine the next level of data, which is traceability, which is still a big problem. So these are the three key issues we as an organization are able to address. And this closely links to the ESG goals as well that the corporates have, the UN, the SDGs as well, which is a worldwide goal now. So, and through this, through our operations, we're able to generate impact as well. Strictly speaking, these three problem statements has a very distinct solution in our organization. The first one would be how we manage waste in a very holistic way, end to end. And we're talking about municipal solid waste that we work with the private sector and with the local bodies as well. Second component, which you all will be aware of, is the reverse logistics around extended producers' responsibility. So for those who are not aware of this, brands and corporates are responsible. They have an extended responsibility beyond just their forward logistics to make sure that their plastic packaging waste is recovered. Not just plastic, but it also applies to e-waste, battery and textile waste as well. And finally, as a proof of concept, we have what's called as closing the loop through bringing back recycled products. We have various kinds of products ranging from plastics, textile, and paper. This is another function within our organization which helps us to, close the circular loop and bring back materials into the supply chain. The way our organization looks at waste, it's not waste. It's more than resource. It's material. It's commodity, and that's the way we approach waste management. Now let's dig into today's topic, and we heard a little bit about what a small town is, and this is in today's discussion, in context of today's discussion. Let's address small town in a more simplified way. Of course, we heard that it's a 1 million, under a 1 million population, which will restrict it to city municipal councils, town municipal councils, and town panchayats. It will not include the corporations and the gram panchayats of the village. So imagine if the small towns are neglected, imagine what's the state of rural India. And we know rural India also is quite a big piece of the waste generation. So if you take Karnataka, for example, an average population of a small town would be approximately 30,000 in the sense of in average, if you can take it. Of course, it's higher and lower, but let's take that for today's discussion. And considering a 30,000 population, we estimate around, and by the way, this is 2011 census, so of course it's going to be more than that. But then we estimate an average of 6 tons per day of dry waste and around 7 tons per day, 7.3 to be precise, of wet waste. That is if we are very precise about segregation at source. So assuming 6 and 7 tons, let's dig into the dry waste management, because typically wet waste management can be handled through composting, especially in rural, where it is very well handled in the backyards, etc. Let's assume that wet waste is also a big problem, but dry waste, which is the major problem, especially plastic and non-recyclables, let's focus on that today. So typically a 6 ton per day requirement, 6 ton of capacity requirement will be fulfilled by what's called a materials recovery facility, an MRF. Like you can see a photo here. This is an MRF that has been set up in Udupi. This has been operational for at least 2 years now. Udupi is a coastal region. It's a coastal city of Karnataka. Typically, your equipment, the infrastructure, which is the facility itself, would cost around about 200 lakhs. And the viability gap funding to operate this, so that, until you hit full capacities, we would need approximately, on an average, 24 lakhs. Now, happy to share that as an organization, we are technical partners with the state government of Karnataka, both urban and with rural. We started off working with rural, but currently we are contracted with the urban to be able to facilitate the 306 odd ULBs that we're talking about as small cities, for them to be able to set up these infrastructures. And today we will dig deeper into the recommendations we've provided and the success stories that we've seen as well. Till date, approximately around 10 MRFs have been operationalized, and many more are in the process as well. There is a vision to set up around, I think around 200 of them, both with the urban and rural put together. So this is deep diving into the dry waste management. It's a decentralized way of dry waste management. This facility will manage around 10 tons of waste, up to 10 tons of waste. But we also have models of operating, beyond, for example, 25 tons per day, 50 tons per day. We have provided design solutions for that as well to the state government. So depending on the population, you'll have different capacities of MRFs. Now let's look at the budget availability, because today is a lot about funding and financing infrastructure, which is one of the biggest gaps. We'll be able to see here through this chart that there is a deficit of almost 50%, which comes up to typically like a 1 crore out of the 2 crore requirement. What about the rest? Let's look at the other opportunities that we have seen in Karnataka for a specific case. The SBM funds, Swachh Bharat Mission funds, are able to provide 8.5 lakhs per ton, that is ton per day, which of course is split into a central government contribution of 50%, state government of 33%, and the ULB will have to bring about 17%. We have seen some of the ULBs taking this up and putting out RFQs and utilizing this fund. Of course, there is another 30 to 50 lakhs available, and options include the 15th Finance Commission, the sanitation funds, smart city funds, etc. These are typically geography specific, so they would vary at different places. But on an average, we can assume that these are definitely a good case. Now, what about the deficit of 50%, which is coming up to 1 crore? So just digging further into the various fund mobilizations that we have noticed in Karnataka, starting from the right side, we have the SBM funds. We mentioned about this already, but SBM 2 will have 8.5. We've also noticed that some of the ULBs have unutilized from SBM phase 1. Those funds are available as well. Of course, we spoke about the 15 Finance as well. And ULBs also will be able to mobilize their own funds. We also have on the top left, developmental funds, which are again very, very region specific. So the first one is something like a district mineral fund or the regional development board fund. Something that is not easy to approach but is available is the MP or MLA LAD funds. Now coming into what the private sector can bring in, we've seen some institutions and private companies coming into funding these projects. So we have seen some machinery coming in through the help of certain NGOs who are operational in the geographies through CSR. We know CSR is definitely a good way of utilizing funds, especially for capex for machinery. We've also seen quite an interesting project that has been mobilized by the World Bank. Nothing has hit the ground yet, but I'm just saying that there are those opportunities as well, especially for coastal regions of India. The World Bank has certain projects which can be tapped into. Of course, like the World Bank, there are other projects available directly to the government. The other support, of course, these are all discussions and debates we can have. Certain things that we can push for, which are GST tax rebates. It's very difficult to understand why waste, which is struggling with very poor viability in terms of the business models, has an 18% GST on it. Some rebates will really help. So we all together have to push for this to happen. And also, in terms of land availability as well and subsidies for machinery, these are definitely certain things that can come in. But what we would like to dig in deeper is the PPP models, the public-private partnership models. Where we're coming from, the current status as of now is all of these are still like a pilot phase, like a proof of concept phase. We feel that once proven, this market can open up to debt and equity funding. Currently, it is not available. Investors are not really looking at this as a great ROI, return on investment. Unfortunately, they don't really want to look at it as a return on impact as well. So funds are not coming in into this sector through these opportunities at the moment. Let's look at a bit more of what we've observed with PPP models. So with PPP models, let's categorize them as these cost heads. The land is quite a big cost. Infrastructure, meaning the building, both put together are a major cost. So this is the key over here. Machinery is to some extent approximately 30% in my opinion. And then with operations, the operation needs to be conducted by either private sector or the government. And then the source of waste, which is the door-to-door collections, etc. So we will share with you today more details of Udupi, the CMC, which has set up a 15-ton per day MRF as a good case study. We will dig deeper in the next slide. But what are the other models that we have noticed in Karnataka itself? In Bangalore, you could consider LCTA, which is the Electronic City Association. It's like a quasi-government body, which has an integrated waste management unit. And in this, we've seen that the government has provided the land and the infrastructure, and the machinery has been contracted out as a operational model to a third party, private sector. And the waste is collected as well by LCTA themselves at the moment. So this is another interesting case. We've seen something happening in Goa. Of course, this is not a small town. It was very difficult to find case studies for all of these, but there's one in Goa which the government has provided the land, and the private sector has come in with the infrastructure, which is the building, the machinery, and the operations itself. The waste is continued to be picked up by the government. So this is quite an interesting piece to observe as a pattern. And finally, we have our own model, which has been operational for at least 6 years now. where we have taken the land. We have also, we've rented the facility. Machinery is through our investments, and we operate it ourselves. We also have our own supply chain, but we take the TMCs and the GPs material as well at a small scale, because it's not fully, it's not fully viable at the moment. But this is another model that we can talk about slightly later. What we feel is, for a PPP model, a build, operate, transfer, transfer would be an ideal model to consider. So that is something, as we go into the details of the PPP model. Let us take a case study of the Udupi CMC's MRF. Back in 2019, the Udupi CMC invested in their own decentralized solutions through collection centers. Now, they have approximately around 24 wards, and they set up approximately around 5 collection centers, I would say, for multiple wards. Each collection center will facilitate multiple wards. This was quite a very interesting model, and they brought together a lot of IEC activities as well. So another company called Sahas NGO, so we are the private limited company, Sahas NGO has been quite instrumental in developing the IEC around these places. So in the same year, they invested quite a bit in terms of door-to-door awareness of segregation at source. Keep your dry waste separate, wet waste separate, domestic hazardous waste separate, etc. So that was quite key. And a very interesting model the next year was to bring in SHGs to operate the collection centers. So the 5 collection centers were operated by different SHGs. Very interesting model. And we see that this is quite a workable model also, provided good livelihood, especially to women in this space. And we know people who've been working in this space in Udupi for a very long time, more than 5-6 years now. And it's been quite a good success story. This is when the Udupi municipality, the ULB decided to commission their own MRF. And 2023, they put together a 10-ton per day MRF with a budget of around 300 lakhs approximately. We've been able to work with them on different contexts. And today, Sahas Zero Waste has also been able to help them to upgrade some of the machinery through some of our other private sector funding, like plastic credits, etc. And other CSR budgets have come in to upgrade as well. I'll show you some of photos of this facility slightly later. But what is very interesting now is an entrepreneur has been onboarded through a contract, who's going to be operating the MRF as a private entity, and again, another social enterprise. So this entire journey has been so fantastic right from the start till today, that they have most of their waste management issues solved. For example, good level of segregation at source, less, so a lot of wet waste management also happening. With the dry waste, it's coming to the MRF. And now we're working towards making it a self-sustained business model. Now, to make it a self-sustained business model, you need different concepts. And we believe that a user fee principle is definitely the way to go at the beginning. But also there are other viability gap funding and other opportunities that can come in. These are some of the images of when the facility was inaugurated. Unfortunately, we don't have latest images of the facility, but it's operational now. And we would invite a lot of people to come and visit Udupi to witness the work that's happening there. You can see trommels, so the target for this particular facility is to have 90% plus recovery moving away from landfill. So we will have less than 10% going to landfill, and this would facilitate to major part of the waste management requirements within Udupi itself. We know Udupi is a special case, but we didn't find too many case studies that we can showcase. But the previous slide, where the journey we're talking about took, as you can see, at least 5 years to happen. Of course, we can shortcut that, and we now have more like a 3-year time period maximum to be able to deliver this. So I'll stop there in terms of my presentation. Actually, there's one more slide. Sorry for this. So very quickly, some of the challenges we've observed is lack of standard machinery because of the budgets available for CapEx, poor segregation at source, I've already mentioned, low waste coverage, collection coverage as well. Sometimes there are no vehicles, or sometimes the vehicles are irregular with the collection. So these are all major issues. And of course, low value waste is a big concern, like textiles, etc. So we're trying to figure out business models for all of those. Some of the key advantages that we've seen of working in a small town, of course, it's a medium-sized population, and the catchment area is very conducive for decentralized solutions. We also found very good support from the administration and the elected body as well. And the citizen, we feel, are very, very receptive to IEC and behavioral change concepts as well. So these are some of the key aspects that we have noticed for small cities, small towns in Karnataka. I would love to address some of your questions that you may have once we have finished the presentations, but that's us. If anyone wants to reach out to us, please feel free to do so. Handing it back to the moderator. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Arunji. We'll have a question and answer after the presentations. We'll have a question and answer sessions. So our next speaker is Ms. Gauri Mirashi, the CEO and co-founder of Eco Sattva Environmental Solutions Private Limited. Ms. Gauri is renowned for her dedication to sustainable environmental practices, and today she will illuminate us on finding forward linkages for waste streams in small towns. Gauri ji, the stage is yours.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And thank you for having me here today. Happy World Environment Day to everyone. I think amidst all the doom and gloom of where we're headed, these conversations are always helpful to kind of set your eyes on the way forward and what can be achieved if more of us can come together and exchange ideas and learn from each other. So thank you for having me here today. Just briefly, I'd like to introduce my organization. We're, again, like Sahas Zero Waste and Sahas NGO. EcoSattva is our private limited company, and we have the Center for Applied Research and People's Engagement, CARPE, as the non-profit arm. We really just got started off in our hometown of Aurangabad, which is a mid-sized city, much larger than the small cities that we're talking about. But we operate with the vision of achieving inclusive, sustainable villages, towns, and cities. And we've been doing that through evidence-driven and partnership-enabled models. And the focus is on finding systemic solutions. So 4 key things about the work that we've been doing is from the start. We started out in about 2015. Our focus has been on the smaller cities and towns because we do believe that the urban experience of these cities and towns is very different from the metro cities. And the metro cities is where most of the urban research and models are coming out of. The smaller cities need their own research and models coming out. The second part is that we're a hybrid where we partner with local self-governments and we do research and consultancy and implementation, really trying to get a whole system to work together. We're looking at solid waste management from a sectoral approach. So we're not, while we're trying to understand the needs and the strengths of each stakeholder, we're approaching it from the perspective of what would work best for any given city or town. And of course, there's research and data that's constantly driving our processes forward. In terms of just solid waste management, so green cover management and water bodies restoration are 2 other sectors we work in. But just in terms of solid waste management, we've worked in about 19 cities, towns, and villages. And that's the experience that I'm drawing from today as I share my experiences of waste management in smaller cities and towns. This is just the ecosystem of partners that have come together to make the solutions happen. And I think, like Arun also mentioned, there's multiple options, whether it's financing, whether it's CSR and partnerships. A lot of people have to come together to make any given solid waste management system work effectively. This is our team. Natasha, my co-founder, and I are working full-time, and then we have support from all of our other directors. We're all here today because our smaller urban centers look like this. And despite the Swachh Bharat mission and all the investments that have come with it, and Maharashtra has also had the Majhi Vasundhara program that's driving more attention towards solid waste management and the environment in general. So while we're seeing bits and pieces of the solution come in, there's nothing tying it all together. So under the Swachh Bharat mission, especially in Maharashtra, We've seen, a 3-ton biogas plant or a structure of a material recovery facility, which is kind of open, but there's a foundation and a roof. We've seen some amount of local bylaws and policies come in. And despite all of this attention, we still have our cities, towns, where waste is ending up in our water bodies, it's being burnt in the open. And and when a municipal body looks at solid waste management, there's of course many actors looking at it. So whether it's an informal scrap dealer or like a national or multinational recycling company, the difference between the way that those actors look at waste management and the way that municipal bodies look at waste management is that for municipal bodies, the end goal, the mandate is to achieve like a clean and healthy living environment for its citizens. For the other actors, sometimes the mandate can be a little bit lesser. It can be about business viability, or it can be about a very specific ward or a very specific lane within a city. But the municipal body is really looking at tackling the solid waste management problem, reclaiming the land that we've put under dumps, and making public spaces usable and people friendly. So it's a much broader mandate, which is why an overall systemic approach is really essential. And so the solution that we've developed and have implemented with all of our partner ULBs is something that we call the BOTRAM process, BOTRAM, every alphabet standing for one step of the process. So very briefly to run you through the process, we begin with a baseline assessment where we map the existing waste management system. Where are the vehicles, which areas are they servicing, where are the garbage vulnerable points, who are the scrap dealers, what materials are they dealing with right now, where are the waste pickers working mostly, where do they live, what are the residents, what are the perceptions of residents, of commercial establishments. So really understanding the waste management system from various perspectives and having like a physical map of it. Where are all of these? Where is processing happening? Where is generation happening? Then we come to the onboarding and orientation phase, which is where we present that baseline report to the leadership of that city, bureaucratic as well as political, and engage in a bit of a visioning exercise that this is where we are today. Over the next 6 months or 12 months, where is it that we want to be? What are the goals that we're setting for ourselves, and what are the policy and resource allocation decisions that we'll have to make those to achieve those goals. Then we come to the training and route mapping part, where we take that vision, take those goals, and work with the field teams, the teams engaged in doorstep collection, the teams engaged in street sweeping, in cleaning of drains, and translate what the everyday needs to look like to be able to achieve those goals. So that has a component of solid waste training, of course, of route mapping and micro planning, so that everyone is clear on which part of the solution they're responsible for. And then there's also, of course, soft skills training in terms of how to conduct awareness, some amount of conflict resolution, because they're interacting with so many stakeholders on a daily basis. Then we come to the resource recovery phase, which is where we set up temporary, if not permanent, destinations for the organics and the dry waste, and if possible, the biomedical hazardous, which is one of the most tricky pieces that we've worked with. And then once the municipal system is set up, once the municipal staff is trained, the infrastructure is aligned, that's when we launch the awareness campaign. That's when we go to citizens asking for 3 main behavior changes. One is to keep the waste with themselves, not dump it outside on the street, and only hand it over to the designated municipal vehicle. The second is, of course, source segregation. And then the last one is to treat the municipal staff and the informal sector waste workers with dignity. And then the final stage is monitoring and maintenance, which is where we're mapping various key data points to make sure that the system that we've set up, the routes that we've set up, the segregation that we've set up is working efficiently. And the monitoring and maintenance continues. What we get out of the BOTRAM process is streamlined collection, like doorstep collection of segregated waste. What we've seen is that as long as the collection is regular and reliable, it does not have to be daily. A lot of urban local bodies struggle with the number of vehicles and the population that they have to serve. We've seen that mostly alternate day collection also works. In some cases, we've even had collection after every 2 days. But as long as it's reliable and regular, the same day, around the same time, people are happy to cooperate with the system. Then we also have effective waste recovery that happens as a result of this segregated collection. And we bring in a certain amount of sustainability through community engagement. Throughout the process, we're working with so many stakeholders, which helps us tide through the various transfers and changes, because we're building up the system with the municipal doorstep collection staff, the supervisory staff, the corporators, all of them are part of it, so that when one piece of the system changes, the others hold it in place. And so, of course, the impact is the regular collection, diversion from landfill, or in a well established system, we can get up to 90% diversion from landfill, and better working environment for the formal and informal sector based workers that get associated with the system. All of the work that we do is we track the data on the Botram app, and we get dashboards and various data points that help us and the municipal leadership to take data driven decisions, make changes, and kind of keep adapting the system and fix it when the problem is small enough. Sorry, excuse me. So looking more closely at the dry waste management, during the baseline assessment, we're able to identify and formally enumerate scrap dealers and waste pickers. Then we're also able to identify the materials that already have a market, the materials that are already being taken up, and what that leaves us with, what kind of materials are the challenge materials. We're also able to establish levels of segregation and also identify low hanging fruit, which areas, where are stakeholders more engaged, more cooperative, where can we begin with. Also, while a lot of cities and towns have, especially in Maharashtra, we've seen that MRFs are being constructed, but for some reason it's a structure that does not have walls. There's a roof, a foundation, and half a wall. But if you're going to be storing inflammable material, we cannot have these open MRFs. But then typically we find some old community hall or center that can be retrofitted into a dry waste unit until the formal MRF can be redesigned and restructured. So those kinds of resources also get identified during the baseline. And then we also get a more accurate estimate of quantities. While the thumb rules are great of how much per day, per household, per person generation there can be, what we see is that there's various levels of leakage, right? Whether it's the household who's storing the raddi and storing the higher value materials and directly selling it into the informal market, or a primary level of collection within a housing society or something where more leakage is happening. Finally, what is easily going to arrive at the municipal material recovery facility? We're able to get a little bit of a sense of that. In the onboarding and orientation phase, this is where I think, like Arun was saying, it's easily a 3-year process where you need to commit to a vision of dry waste management for at least 3 years. It may evolve, but it cannot drastically change. And some really key decisions on the level of involvement for the formal private sector, the level of involvement for the informal sector, whether green jobs and livelihoods is a key value for the urban local body. What kinds of schemes are there to converge into your solid waste management system? What levels of centralization and decentralization you want? All of these are important decisions that can then guide the rest of the process going forward. For example, like Vaijapur, which is a small town that we've worked in, they decided that they were going to truly try and integrate the informal sector, the forward linkages, even the people who are working at the material recovery facility. And they came up with a model where the informal sector sorters would come in and sort the material and sell it themselves. So they would earn from the materials. And the Nagar Parishad would provide a 150 rupee per day payment to kind of subsidize, acknowledging the fact that they're working on mid to low value materials and not necessarily the high value materials, which were leaking out of the system at the point of collection. Fulambri, on the other hand, which is another town that we're working with, has decided that given its current bandwidth and capacity, they would really just want someone else, like a private player, to come in and take charge of the material recovery facility. So depending on the resources available and the priorities, there needs to be one vision that guides dry waste recovery in the ULB. That then translates into the training and capacity building. What kind of training do you give your sanitation staff? Are you aiming for a separate once a week dry waste collection, and then other days of the week you're collecting organics, or is it every day all kinds of waste? So each system would need a different kind of a training that happens. And what we've seen is crucial is something that we've come to call as an ecosystem orchestrator. Like I said before, dry waste management is not simply a matter of receiving the material, sorting it, and selling it forward. There's so many actors, whether it's your pollution control board, your formal and informal forward linkages. If you're trying to achieve a viable material recovery facility, then there's the additional complexity of accessing and securing the higher value materials, whether it's being purchased from the informal sector or you're finding another way of integration. And then there is also the keeping up with what are the technological advancements that are happening, the materials that nothing can be done with, what kind of technologies, what kind of partners are available. So there's a lot of constant R&D and data driven adaptation that needs to happen. And so an ecosystem orchestrator, whether it's a regional or social enterprise that you engage, or it's a nodal officer or a sanitation inspector who's trained to be able to do that, I think that's what provides the consistency to keep the system going and to constantly better it. And then, of course, you have your resource recovery. With municipal solid waste, like I said before, it's not just about the dry waste. It's about how the entire system is working, and how the city is hence looking, and how people are experiencing the city. So while the material recovery facilities is the big piece of infrastructure, we've seen that other infrastructure like barricading your bridges to make sure that your waste is not going into your water bodies or your rivers and nalas, plastic traps to recover what does end up into the water bodies. All of this infrastructure needs to come together to make sure you're truly addressing all of the plastic waste and dry waste that's being generated in the city or town. When it comes to the awareness campaigns, we've also seen that the MRFs become a very key location for the awareness to take place, whether it's through visits or whether it's through the Safai Sathis becoming brand ambassadors, becoming public speakers who are going out there and raising awareness. And then, of course, there's the monitoring and maintenance, which gives you insights into which materials are coming in, which materials has an easy offtake, which materials need a deeper dive. Like Arun mentioned, I think we begin with a pile of mixed waste, which looks really daunting. And then as we begin to implement the system, the organics, which is 60% of the waste, they get taken care of, and it feels a little bit less daunting. And then even within the dry waste, once your hard plastics and your soft plastics are taken care of, we come up with really like nuanced materials, whether it's textiles or it's furniture. Pillows and mattresses is a very special kind of waste, which is challenging both for collection and for processing. So the the quantity of waste that you're dealing with becomes narrower, but then the more specialized waste streams need much more research and much more engagement to get solutions for. And so once we look at dry waste in this larger context, in this as being part of a much bigger system of waste management, the linkages for the waste streams, typically we've seen that the smaller the city, the lesser the categories that we're able to find forward linkages for. So if in a city like Aurangabad, we're able to find forward linkages for LD, HM, and PP separately, in a much smaller town, it's mixed soft plastics that are then going to a larger center where further sorting of those materials is happening. This is, of course, because of volume and scale, because otherwise you'd have to store for much longer, and that storage capacity often does not exist. And also that the informal sector has truly made inroads into the smallest towns and the smallest villages, even. So the beginning for us has always been with the informal sector. When it's the informal sector, it's definitely the higher value materials that are being taken off. There is a strengthening required for social outcomes, and that that requires an engagement with the informal sector. It's almost like a partnership. There's historically a large amount of mistrust often between the municipal body and the informal sector, but there have been some great models where that has been overcome and the informal sector has been integrated. So then there's the group of the formal recyclers. For us, it's been a matter of really quarterly reaching out to all the SPCB listed registered recyclers. We find that a large number of them prefer to work with the pre-consumer waste and are just about beginning to look at post-consumer waste. This is specific to the Aurangabad region where we are. And this is often a very long-term discussion. So, they'll take one pilot lot, they'll see how it works for them, they'll give you feedback on what worked, what didn't work. And it's a process of developing a partnership where finally we arrive at a material that they're able to offtake. Then, like I mentioned, there's the keeping up with the innovation. Being partnership friendly is something that we've really, it could really put a ULB in a very unique position to manage its solid waste. LEDeG, for example, there was an organization looking to pilot some digital monitoring of solid waste management systems. And the willingness that the Alibag Nagar Parishad showed to partner with this organization really allowed them to invest in both IEC, in setting up routes, in mapping those routes. And what we see is that while the top leadership of a urban local body may be very keen on partnering, the ability of the junior engineers or the sanitation supervisors to partner is often not that high. So that level of capacity building also is required to ensure that such partnerships can be formed, and especially the unique waste, the textiles or your e-waste or mattresses, like I've mentioned before. Those, if the ULB can become a partner to a research project and to a pilot project, I think that provides great opportunity for the more unique and special wastes. And then there's, of course, the clusters, the formation of clusters for volume and scale. So in Rajguru Nagar, for example, they made a cluster with 7 gram panchayats around them so that their material recovery facility would be handling higher quantities of waste, and then the outflow of materials could be faster. And then, of course, the material was going to a larger urban center in near Chakan. So I think the partnership, not just with private players, but also with other government players, becomes crucial for specific kinds of waste that need larger volumes. Over the years, as we've done this work, just in some, as the last slide, I'd like to summarize the lessons that we've learned. One is that small cities can be transformed quickly and effectively. So because the distance between the municipal, the chief officer and the resident, or the president, mayor and the resident, is much shorter than it is in larger cities, the transformation can be really quick. In about 6 months, we're able to transform a city of, let's say, 50,000, 80,000 population, slightly longer periods for, 2, 3, 4 lakh population cities. Second thing is segregation is really a non-negotiable. Like when we started handling multi-layered packaging, MLP, so initially it was a non-recoverable material for our MRFs. As EPR set in, it found a forward linkage. The cement factories, the connections were established. EPR credits and revenues were secured. So almost like a 30% increase in resource recovery happened because the MLP had a destination to go to. And now we're at a stage where co-processing is not looked on as the best option. We're looking at recycling as the option for material recovery facility. So I think every stream and every type of waste is going through its own journey of research and solutions. And the cleaner and the lesser the contamination, the more likely you are to find the forward linkages. The third
Hi,
thing is,
Gauriji.
yes,
Sorry to interrupt you, but as we are short on time,
sure.
may I ask you to please wrap up your final
Yes,
points? Yes.
yes, yes, absolutely. Someone has to pay. I think this is also something that has been addressed before. The low value materials cannot be expected to be handled free of cost. The narrative of there is wealth in waste and hence private players should come in and handle all of it free of cost is, we found that to be very problematic. data collection is essential. It really provides the guidance on what materials to focus on, which areas to focus on. Um, Waste reduction need not be ruled out as unviable. This is very premature for me to say because we're just about getting started on our waste reduction pilots. But since we've realized it too late, I'm hoping that others will start on the waste reduction exploration much sooner in the solution finding exercise. And finally, that ecosystem orchestrator, whether it's internal to the municipal body or someone external, it's critical that that role is really what keeps the system going and keeps the system improving. And then really ending on the fact that with municipal systems, we're not just looking at viability and financial revenues and profits, but really looking at how our cities can transform with better waste management. Thank you.
Thank you, Gauriji, for your valuable insights. Now we will hear from Ms. Anju Varghese, the program coordinator for India at Boda South Asia. Anju will emphasize the importance of data-driven decision-making tools for municipalities. Anju ji, please proceed.
Thank you, sir. Let me just share my screen. Yes, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, your screen is visible, but it's not on full screen.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. As we have looked into multiple aspects of solid waste management, specifically for small towns, especially on the different streams of waste, how we can manage it, it's also very essential to understand what are we actually handling. Like Gauri had mentioned that, understanding of the different streams of waste that we handle helps us understand how to plan and effectively manage these waste. And that is where the importance of data-driven decision making comes up for municipalities. So here we will be looking into the application of the waste flow diagram, a specific tool for understanding the solid waste management, solid waste flow across from generation till the end. So why do we need tools? I think the context is already set by Kiran Mai and Arun and also Gauri that small towns are becoming the next rapid urban growth centers. And most often what we see is estimate numbers, which as already mentioned is good, but might not give you a real on-ground scenario of what exactly is being generated. Often we see assumptions like waste collection is the same as waste generation, or we take a bracket data and multiply it, but we don't know if that is exactly what the waste generation is for the specific town we are looking into, because multiple factors and the rapid urbanization contribute towards it. And then there is a mismatch in the reported data also, like CPCB and also the data that might come in SBM. And also, even when we say that there is 100% collection, often we go to the town, we might see waste lying around. So is it actually the on-ground scenario or not is something we need to check into. And how tools can help is basically what we'll see here. So the waste flows from your source to the end. As everyone might be aware, I'm not taking you through the cycle. There might be multiple loops or chains that is there for different towns, but I would like to bring your focus into the leakage into the environment that is happening from the initial stage into multiple stages. At different stages of your collection mechanism also, this leakage into environment could happen, and this is something that goes unaccounted or unnoticed most of the time, let alone take action about it. And this is where tools like waste flow diagrams help. It is a tool that helps the cities and municipality to assess how the waste flows from the beginning till the end and how the different streams of waste flows through this value chain. So initially it was developed to look into the plastic waste movement through the waste streams, different streams of value chain. But we have customized it and contextualized it to look into the solid waste management, different types of solid waste that goes from generation till the end point of it. So we have already done this WFD for waste flow diagram for Leh in Ladakh, along with the support of LEDeG, and also with the support of our partner organization Waste Concern in a small town of Savarin Kushtia in Bangladesh. Further, we are also planning on doing it for some small towns in Karnataka and also some of the towns in the hilly regions of India. So our understanding on the effort that might be required for doing such a survey is that you'll have to take about 300 of samples and would require almost 1 to 1.5 months to do the survey and complete the assessments. And the cost estimate is 5 to 6 lakh, but it can definitely be brought down based on the resources that we are utilizing, and also using municipalities' resources, trucks, etc., would definitely bring it down. So I'll just roughly take you through the methodology we had done. We definitely plan the samples, etc., have the surveyors onboarded, and we look at what is a waste generation. We go for the primary data collection for waste generation in the households and commercial level and look at the composition of waste at the multiple points of the value chain. And we look into what is the exact waste collected, not just by municipality, but also by the informal workers, and also that is managed at source by the households itself, and what exactly goes unmanaged, which is reaching your dump sites or even the open dumping or the garbage vulnerable points, and even the natural water resources, etc. So from this, what do you get? From the waste generation and the composition, we understand what is the actual per capita generation of waste, not just the estimate, but actually with the kind of nature or the growth that the town is having, what is a per capita generation of waste? And with that, the total waste generated in the town, and a clear idea on what is managed, what is not managed. And apart from this, whatever happens, there is leakages. It clearly shows that there is leakage of waste happening apart from the quantified unmanaged waste as well. So this is the understanding or learnings from the study that we did it in Leh. So just major key points I would like to highlight, which was brought to attention, was that one, the waste generation we did for summer and winter for Leh to understand the seasonal variation. And the waste generation in summer was almost 4 times that of winters. So this understanding was also essential to plan out your processes so that you can have waste management increase capacity to what level in summers, and also that a major portion of this was also wet waste, 64%. So how adoption of decentralized approaches can be done, and 30% of the waste was managed at source. So this shows what you can promote or what you can incentivize so that the load on the municipal system also doesn't increase. Now, looking at a wider perspective, what exactly is the applicability and way forward for a WFT? So there are multiple leakage points that you would identify by doing the WFT survey. And this becomes the priority action points. And this becomes your short-term goal. So any schemes that come up, this is something that we can get it ready and easily plug in as priority action points, and which would stop the leakage of waste, making sure from beginning to end that the waste stream is flowing in a proper manner, in a managed manner. Second is the waste generation and collection data. So the more close we are to the waste generation data and the waste collection data, it helps you close the loops and plan better of the resources and the capacities. So planning effectively through the season, accommodating the seasonal variations, and accommodating for maybe you want more demand, there is more of wet waste that is reaching, or sometimes wet waste might be more managed at source. So this gives you much more clarity to pick up on those medium term action points. And then you visualize the overall flow, which helps you in the formulation of a detailed action plan for solid waste management, which is definitely grounded and data driven, and support in making of bylaws. So this also helps you with a specific, stream specific bylaw formulation if needed. If you are looking into wet waste specifically, or if you're looking into plastic waste specifically, this gives you more clarity at which point of the value chain do you want to plug in this bylaws to better manage your solid waste management. And WFT can also be applied before and after any intervention that you have done, which you can help in understanding if this intervention has been successful, to achieve the goal that it was set for. So such long-term measures can also be planned. And by doing such multiple towns at a state level also, you can come up with better, clear understanding on what policies can be formulated, which inputs into a state level as well. So such data-driven mechanisms or state data-driven policies and action plans would definitely help in better formulating and better managing the solid waste at a smaller or municipality, small towns and municipality level. So with that, I conclude on the utilization of tools for improved solid waste management for small towns. Thank you.
Thank you, Anju. So our final speaker for today is Mr. Stanjan Rabges, the Executive Officer of Municipal Committee Leh. Mr. Rabges will provide us with invaluable municipal perspectives on solid waste management practices in small towns. Mr. Rabges, we are honored to have you with us. Yes, screen is visible.
Hi, good evening. Hello.
Hello, Rabges.
Yes,
You are
am I
visible.
audible?
Yes, yes.
Utsal, will you be sharing the screen?
We have already shared.
Okay. So good evening, everyone, and a very happy World Environment Day to all the participants. So for today's webinar, I'll be talking from the municipal perspectives on the solid waste practices in small towns. Like India is a developing nation, and we have roughly around 4,800 cities, small cities, towns, and bigger cities all over the country. And each ULB, each municipality or each local authority is responsible for managing their waste. So if we talk about the solid waste management in smaller towns, so solid waste management is very important to is very important that a local authority should undertake, because it's under the 12th schedule under the 74th constitutional amendment. It's mandated, has been given to the municipality to look after the sanitation, not only the solid waste, but the other waste also, like the liquid waste, the construction waste and all. So it's our duty as a municipality that, for the welfare of the people, the municipality is the responsible, for which there has to be effective solid waste management solutions. And for cities like Leh, which is very small and which has different challenges in terms of topography, in terms of geography, in terms of location, we have a very separate and different challenges from rest of the country. So if we talk about adapting the national schemes to local needs, so geographical challenges, like I already mentioned, Leh is situated at a very high altitude, and because the climate is very different, it's a dry and cold desert. So we have a very different climate all across the year, and we have some challenges regarding the accessibility as well, because Leh is it gets cut off from rest of the country for like 4 or 5 months during the winter season due to heavy snowfall. All the the road transportation, they gets closed. And same like waste handling is also a very huge issue with us because of the high transportation cost. See, like places in Leh, we found a very different issues for handling the waste. Like most of our waste collection vehicles, so they are mostly diesel based, so they get freeze during the winter season. So it becomes very challenging for a municipality to to manage their waste during the winter time. And also during the winter, whatever waste we receive at our plant, we just bale it, but the roads are closed, so we are not able to send it back to a recycler or a recycling unit. So it's because of the high transportation cost, and also because of the inaccessibility during the winter season. And one more important challenge that we are facing is the high inflow of tourists during the summer season. Because Leh is now a very famous tourist destination, and during the summer season, we are receiving a lot of tourists in Leh, uh, which is resulting in more waste generation in the whole Leh city area, in the peripheral areas as well. So, which is basically adds additional challenge. And if we talk about the schemes and funds, so yes, there are many schemes, centrally sponsored schemes, and many centrally sector schemes which is being funded by the government of India, and which are now implemented at the local level. Next slide, please. So we need some customized solution based on our location, based on our need, based on our necessity. Because see, in India, the waste management was not very effective prior to the solid waste management 2016 rules, which came into effect in 2016 only. So it is only after the solid waste management rules that came into existence in 2016, which has issued many important directions, which has also defined important guidelines, important roles, responsibility of each ULBs. But here I would like to mention that in this kind of cases, uh, the schemes must be also customized or tailored to the local conditions, because in most of the cases what we have seen and observed is like most of the things are basically developed keeping into mind the local needs, the plain Indian needs, whereas we as a lay we have some different challenges. So like in the previous slides I've mentioned the how the diesel based vehicles they get freeze. So I believe these kinds of schemes should also be customized according to the local uh, requirement. For example, the adjusting the waste collection schedules to account for seasonal accessibility issues. Like during the winter season, we are facing a lot of challenges. Uh, However, at the same time, the waste generation is also low during the during the winter season because of the less tourist footfall. And we also need to emphasize on localized waste processing and composting to reduce transport challenge. Next slide. Okay, then there are few government centrally sponsored schemes which is also being implemented in Ladakh region, particularly in Leh and Kargil. So in 2021, so before the 2021 also there was a Swachh Bharat mission scheme for urban areas, and in 2021 the Swachh Bharat mission 2.0 also started. So it has issued many guidelines, and the municipality is following that guidelines, how to handle the waste. Basically it focuses more on the making the India garbage free through the effective solid waste management, how to segregate the waste at source level, and what should be the how effective the collection transportation should be, and how effective it should be processed at the MRF facility. And similarly, there are other schemes like Amrut Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. So it's basically more gives emphasis on the managing the liquid water management. And similarly, during the winter season, we are also facing a specific problem in respect of the liquid waste management, because of the harsh climate, because the temperature goes down below sub-zero. So it becomes very challenging for a city like Leh to provide basic services, say like uh, we don't we are not able to provide a water supply in through tap waters in washrooms during winter season, because of this of the extreme cold climate condition. And similarly, there are some other government schemes also, like Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and like National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, etc. Next, please. So because it's the mandate for municipality to handle the waste, to manage the waste which is being generated in a Leh town, for which some fundings are needed, some fundings are required for any local body. If I talk in context of Leh city, so we received a fund from government. So it's basically a UT administration now after the formation of UT. So we are basically now uh, being funded by the government of India. So most of all of the funds we are receiving is from the government of India for managing our waste, for procurement of machineries, for procurement of vehicle, for waste collection vehicles and all. And there are some state sector schemes also. Apart from that, we also receive some fund under the Finance Commission. Uh, and apart from that, each ULB has their own resources. So they collect taxes. They have a good source of revenue. So they can also be funded from their own sources. Second is the PPP mode. So PPP is, I believe, it's perhaps the one of the important aspect how funding should be structured, because in Leh we have this beautiful facility called FSTP, which was basically the first model in all over India, which was carried out on PPP mode in the hilly region, and it is running quite successfully, because ULB have some limitations, some constraints in respect of the resources. Uh, if they have fund, but they don't have the proper the technical team to cater to all those needs. So I believe there's the ULB should should develop a framework how to go into a PPP mode in solid waste or liquid waste management. And there are also some other financing methods also, like green bonds, like carbon credits, and there are some international organizations like World Bank and all. They are also uh, uh, showing interest in funding in these kind of a projects, provided the project has to be economy viable. Uh, and a collaboration is one important thing, how the funding should receive. And if we talk about the best practices and recommendations for any city, it is important that a proper comprehensive survey and assessment should undertake to see what is the the kind of waste they are receiving, they are generating, in order to ascertain the exact quantification and characterization of waste, based on which a ULB can decide what should be their method for managing the waste. And secondly, there has to be some technical solution for waste management also, because each year now there is urbanization, there is technological advancement. So I believe there has to be some digitally technical solution, which should be integrated for the efficient waste management. And we should also promote us, the 3R approach of the waste management, rather than just you know focusing on collection and transportation and processing. We should basically adopt a 3R approach of waste management. That is the reduce, reuse, and recycle. That's how I believe the cities will be sustainable uh, in terms of managing their waste. And the important aspect is to engage the local citizen, the local community. I believe because we are in a developing nation, so the people are not very much concerned or responsible for the waste they generated in a particular town. But we should adopt there is a saying called polluters to pay. So we should adopt such practices, because it is equally important for the citizens of a particular town to manage their waste also, because because they are the generators. I believe it is important that for a ULB, one should start collecting charges from the citizen, from all other establishments. And these kind of charges which they ULB levy on their citizen, they should also be incorporated in under this solid waste management local municipality bylaws, so they can get some legal backing. So only after that we will be able to you know uh, uh, ensure the solid waste management practices. Next slide.
Thank you, Kale. I think that was the last slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kisle. Now we'll move forward to our question and answer session. So we'll try to, as because of the time constraint, we'll try to answer as much as question on this webinar only. But for the other questions that remains unanswered, you can mail it to us, or even our speakers that they can directly go to the Q&A section and answer them. So the first question is for Mr. Arun. So, what are the primary challenges you have encountered when integrating private investments into small town waste management? Sir,
Yeah.
if you may.
Yeah, thank you. So I can categorize investments into a few types. The first one is, of course, equity and debt investments. Unfortunately, waste management isn't a very profitable proposition when it comes to responsible waste management and compliant waste management. So when you operate in a formal way, it's not a very highly profitable model unless you have very good business models in place. So it's not really very easy to get equity and debt investments. The other forms of investments, of course, is CSR, which are unfortunately limited to the geographies where the brands would, or the corporate would have their factories. So it's predominantly around the factories. I wouldn't say always, but predominantly that's the case. Otherwise, when it comes to other forms of investments like grants, etc., there are very few and small grants that are available out there. The other couple of things that I can think of is like carbon credits and plastic credits. EPR, I could add to it because it's a similar model. Unfortunately, the values for EPR, the revenue that comes in for managing plastic waste or e-waste is very, very small. It does not meet the operational costs, and it's not really too viable. Plastic credits and carbon credits are very, very few and hasn't reached scale. So these are the major challenges when it comes to bringing in investments into the sector.
Thank you, sir. And I think there are some other questions for you also in the Q&A section. You can have a look at them, and if you want to reply, you can reply there also. Otherwise, we'll get these questions mailed to you also. So the next question is for Ms. Gauri. Uh, wanted to know more about the traders of the record material. You have briefly talked about the small informal traders. Have you noticed any apex traders? Can you talk a bit about the enabling environments for the resource recovery traders? Mr. Digvijay, they asks.
Um, yes. So I think every geography has its own set, like has its own network of these traders. Typically, it is small aggregators with some amount of value addition, like further sorting or by color or by removal of certain components from a compound, and then going on. So in the case of Aurangabad, a lot of the so we have some informal recyclers who are actually going from plastic to, let's say, granules in a very informal setting, very poor environmental and social safety standards, and that will happen within the city. But that's a city like Aurangabad, and even for Aurangabad, which is a relatively large city, we have a recycling hub in a neighboring city called Maligaon. And so that's where most of the material is landing up. Again, mostly informal, but there are some formal recyclers in Maligaon itself. For the even smaller cities, the Gangapur, the Vaijapur around Aurangabad, it's mostly that um, I guess the apex trader, as you're calling them, are sort of centralized in some of these larger cities, and some of them working with both pre-consumer and post-consumer waste, and some of them working on either or. So I think it's a different chain and a different network for each city that we've worked in terms of an enabling environment. I think the, they've established their own networks in a manner that's efficient in some ways. It is when it comes to meeting environmental and social standards, that's the support, that's the area of support that is required. I think the first thing is the willingness to engage. In fact, in Aurangabad, where we've been working for a long time, very recently has the narrative gone from the informal sector is stealing from formal municipal waste collection mechanisms to the informal sector is now a partner, let us formally sell. So I think that narrative of partnership itself is just about beginning to change right now. I think there's definitely a strength of experience and networks that the informal sector has established. But definitely in terms of formalizing, in terms of traceability, in terms of data and transparency, and then of course your social and environmental outcomes, in terms of like what little amount of reject waste is generated, how that's handled, whether that's burnt in the open, like and even private players need support in that, right? Like formal private players. But like if you treat them similarly, then the informal sector also needs support in those aspects. So I hope that answers your question. And I had noticed one more about institutional capacity building. And I'd just like to say that I think, like for any system, maintenance is necessary, right? So even just building a road, it's a physical thing that you deliver and you construct, and it still needs maintenance, right? It needs potholes that need to be filled. So similarly, any waste management system that you set up, there'll be an initial investment while the system setting is happening. But I think to expect that it will magically sustain on its own is a bit unrealistic, and a monitoring and maintenance contract, to keep doing the data analysis, and more parts of that can be transferred onto the municipal body through capacity building of the sanitation staff and the supervisors and sanitation inspectors. But I think an investment in monitoring maintenance is essential for solid waste management, as it is for all other infrastructure and services.
Thank you, Gauriji. So, due to time constraints, we regret that we can only answer one more question during this live session. However, please feel free to mail us any remaining questions. We'll also provide our mail also in the chat, and we will endeavor to provide prompt responses. So the next question we have is for Ravgesh sir. So how is the peak waste managed in Leh, and is there some additional funding allocations for the same? Ravgesh sir, can you, if you would please answer that?
Yes, yes, yes. Just a request. Can you please ask the question again?
How is peak waste managed in Leh? Is there some additional funding allocation for the same?
So far, just like what Ms. Gauri has mentioned, like managing the waste is more maintenance. Maintenance is more challengeable. Same is the case in Leh also. Like in Leh, we do have an integrated solid waste plant. The capacity is 30 ton. However, during the peak summer season, we are receiving, I mean, we are generating waste around 45 tons per day. So it's 15 to 20 tons more than our capacity. Yeah. So we are definitely facing a lot of issues in terms of management. However, the funding is not the issue, because after the creation of a separate UT, we are receiving a lot of grants, lot of fund from Government of India. In fact, we recently completed a legacy waste project in Leh. It was something around 11.5 crores. So all the funding was done through the UT administration, the UT Ladakh administration. And for the maintenance, see, we do not have the capacity to run the integrated solid waste management plant. So we are basically trying, we will be approaching the higher authorities just to outsource it to a third party for operation maintenance, because we have some limitations, we have some constraints, because we don't have a proper technical staff, technical human resource to run that plant. So in the coming days, I'm sure we will be operating, we will be outsourcing our plant for operation maintenance.
Thank you, Ravizli. So once again, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for your active participation in engagement throughout this webinar. Together, let us continue to strive towards a cleaner, greener, and more sustainable future for generations to come. Before we conclude, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers for sharing their valuable insights today. Your contributions have truly been enlightening. Now I would like to invite Mr. Ishe Tunduk, Executive Director of LEDeG, to deliver a closing remarks.
Hello, Julia, and good evening to each and everyone participating in this webinar. So I, on behalf of LEDeG and the border organization, would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all the expert speakers for sharing their expertise and knowledge about the garbage problem we are facing everywhere. And it was indeed a great informative sessions to each and everyone. And I hope that all the participants, all the attendees must have learned a great information, lot of information about the problem we are facing everywhere and how it can be tackled, how it can be managed. And I would also like to thank all the other attendees for taking their time to take part in this webinar. You know, LEDeG has been working on sustainable project for the last more than 40 years, mainly on environmental related issues. We feel that to make people understand, awareness is one of the major program we are conducting. We visit all the villages and make people understand the importance of uh, managing and important of producing less and less garbage from their home and houses. So if people understand this, if people feel their responsibility and create a sense of civic sense that is very important to tackle these kind of issues and problem. So without taking much of your time, once again, thanks on behalf of LEDeG and Border, all the expert speakers for sharing their views and ideas, very valuable information. And I hope that everyone must have gained a lot of information, knowledge, and how to handle, how to tackle, how to minimize this garbage problem we are facing today. Once again, thanks each and everyone, and good evening, Julie, to all. Thank you very much.